Hello, darlings. Thanks for joining me once again. Did you miss me? I certainly missed you. Can't help myself. I also can't help responding to idiots. That's a flaw of mine, I guess. Here's two absolute idiots, one called Mark Bell and one called Anabology. Mark Bell being a gym junkie, roid-using imbecile who thinks eating sugar is a good idea. And Anabology, a boy who couldn't hack it in a PhD program, quit because he feels like he knew more about it than the professors he was working with, I guess. I don't know what his reasons were. I don't care either. But a boy who thinks he knows about science who clearly doesn't. And they want to tell us about the sugar, though. Let's get back to the sugar thing, though, because we haven't dealt with that one already. All right, let's hear it from Mark Smelly Bell and this other turd.
Yeah, Anabology, can you explain to us where the hell sugar fasting and honey diet?
Okay, well, sugar fasting is an oxymoron, unlike Mark Bell, who's just a moron, because sugar means you're not fasting if you're consuming some. Okay? Pretty straightforward. You're looking well, by the way, Mark. You really don't look at all red and puffy, bloated. Your eyes don't at all look like they're sinking into the back of your skull. And while you've got some muscle mass, well, that's probably mostly to do with the roids that you've been taking for years and years and years more than anything else. Really not an example that I would put forward as being someone that anyone would want to listen to on anything. Mark Bell being the sort who also believes people like lame f***ing Norton are good examples of people to follow and who know stuff about thermodynamics, when lame Norton can't even get the first law of thermodynamics right, let alone apply it correctly. I hope Anabology does better in that regard. Probably won't, though.
And some of this stuff came from?
Yeah, so I think that like people have actually been doing this for like quite a long time. I mean, so if you look at like Freely and Durian Rider, like these are people who have been doing.
All right, so straight away we know that this guy is a buffhead. Right there. Anyone that listens to either of those absolute f***ing idiots, imbeciles, both of those individuals are a complete waste of perfectly good oxygen. Neither one of them has anything remotely intelligent to say on any topic. You're done. Anabology. You might as well not f***ing bother. But since we started, we'll complete. Off you go.
Doing like these super high sugar diets and just under the vegan kind of fruitarian sphere. But I don't think it really came into the more kind of mainstream like bodybuilder health side until like probably the past.
Bodybuilder health? Conflating bodybuilding with health? There's your next mistake. No. Bodybuilders are some of the least healthy people on the planet.
Last 2 years. So about a year and a half ago, I like found these studies online after kind of growing a Twitter.
You read some studies online, so you're an expert. Good.
For a little bit in like the repeat space.
Right, so there's the next clue that you're a imbecile. Repeat. Peatism. My God, does it get any worse?
And Ray Peat was, this guy who thought that sugar was good. He thought seed oils were bad. And he was talking about this in the 1970s.
Yeah, but that doesn't make him right. He was right about seed oils. They are bad, but he was wrong about sugar. It's not good for you. Clearly, obviously.
After doing some aging research.
No, he didn't do any such thing.
Before anybody else ever even knew about seed oils. Like everybody was celebrating back in the 1970s how much soy production had grown in the US, right? So I learned about Ray Peat and kind of I think it was in 2010, these scientists gave mice Coca-Cola instead of water.
Okay, great. Well, next time I'm talking to a mouse about its health prospects, I'll make sure that I outline this study to that mouse. You f***ing imbecile. Did you notice we're not a mouse? I'm not a mouse. I'm not Mises. I hate Mises to pieces. I'm a human being. We have different needs, different metabolic pathways, etc. slightly. Well, quite meaningfully, in fact. All right, imbecile.
To drink, right? And they were just eating a normal diet otherwise.
What's a normal diet? And is it a normal diet for a mouse or for a person? Because Mises and people aren't the same thing, are they?
But like at all times, instead of like from their little feeding tube, they get water, they get Coca-Cola. And they measured the amount of calories.
No, they didn't. False.
That they ate over this.
No, they didn't eat any calories. It is physically impossible to eat calories. Calories have zero rest mass, ergo they cannot be brought to rest in any inertial frame, ergo you can not eat calories, imbecile.
like study period. And over like a long time,
How long's a long time, pal?
the ones that had the Coca-Cola drank and ate 4 times the calories
No, they didn't. You cannot eat any calories still. None at all.
as the ones that didn't drink the Coca-Cola, that just had water. Yet at the end, they weighed the exact same. So that's like a 400%.
What is the weight of a calorie? 0. How much effect can a calorie have on one's weight? Whether you be a mice or a mises or a people? None at all. Any number whatsoever, with the addition of any numbers of zeros or the subtraction of any number of zeros, will leave the original number unchanged. Good.
Metabolic rate increase in these mice. And I'm like, why
Yes, the metabolic rate increased. We get that. Probably due to FGF21.
is this like not great, like insanely big news?
That's a bit speculative, though.
And the study title literally just said something.
Literally said, okay, well, you're an imbecile. You do not need to add the word literally, especially when it literally is used incorrectly and literally adds literally nothing to what you're saying whatsoever. Just give us the title of the paper.
Like, oh, soft drinks alter lipid profiles and slightly make your cholesterol like a little bit worse.
Oh my God. Wow. This boy is so fucking stupid, it's painful. Cholesterol got worse. In what way, son? Now you're an expert in cholesterol as well? No, you're not.
So they didn't even write in the title of the paper that like they had this insane weight outcome because they were
insane weight outcome. Very scientific. Good.
So against sugar that they had to spin it, against soft drinks in some way. So then I saw this paper where they were drinking a ton of sugar and
no, they weren't drinking a ton of sugar. No, how would you get a mouse to drink a ton of sugar?
Not gaining any weight. And I like dug more into it and
you did you? Being an expert in science and all. Good. Let's hear it.
On some other papers that had replicated this, like in mice in the past.
Oh, good. Right. So now we're very clear about what happens in mice, are we? Excellent.
And at the same time, like 2023, there were these papers released by the Lambing Lab.
Did I mention how well Mark Bell is looking? Woo!
Which is like a kind of dietary protein restriction studying lab these days. And they found that when they restricted one amino acid called isoleucine in mice, they lived like 30% longer.
Excellent. Great. I'll tell all the mice I know about that next time we're having a mice's meeting.
The mice ate more and then they weighed less by the end of the study.
Oh, well, great. I'll tell all the mice I know.
By, obviously when they're dead, they're weighing nothing, but like the entire time.
No, they still weigh something when they're dead until their bodies are no more. My God. Is it possible to be any more ignorant and arrogant than this ridiculous child? Have you done your homework and helped your mummy with the dishes? You should be doing that rather than talking to, this imbecile Bell.
So these seem like disparate, right? Because just having isoleucine restriction and then eating a ton of sugar and
no, he's still not eating a ton of anything still.
Both of those like leading to weight loss don't really seem connected, but they eventually found that the linking factor between these two things, they found that isoleucine restriction induced FGF21 really strong.
Right, well, there you go. So there's a speculative link. Okay, good.
Strongly. And FGF21 is this factor that's also induced whenever you overeat sugar.
No. FGF21 is induced directly by protein restriction. It's nothing to do with the sugar. God's sake.
So then they also, the other studies found, there's like a ton of studies here, right? But
a ton of studies. A ton of studies, you say?
Studies found that like FGF21 alone was kind of responsible for these protein restriction life extending effects, right? And then if you got rid of the FGF21 response, you would get rid of these metabolic rate increase and lifespan extending effects.
No, that's a vast oversimplification of the body of knowledge that we are aware of so far in the literature regarding FGF21. It's totally incompetent, son. As are you. Maybe you should have stayed in school.
So then, around the same time, I also saw some papers where if you overeat sugar in humans, it induces FGF21.
No, that's only if you hold back on the protein. It's nothing to do with the sugar still.
So it's like all the ingredients were there, right?
No, wrong. Wrong. Completely wrong.
every side is saying that like FGF21 is induced if you get rid of protein, if you increase sugar. And
you
then,
don't need to increase the sugar to make this happen. You can do the same thing with a very, very high fat, very low protein diet, in fact. Okay, perhaps if you were able to remotely do a comprehensive literature search, you'd have found that out.
and that should increase metabolic rate. But at that point,
Why would increasing metabolic rate be something that we would strive for? If anything, that would tend towards a shortening of the lifespan, not an elongation of it. Whoops.
I didn't see anybody ever try it in humans. So I was like, I might as well try it, right? I might as well try this and see if I just eat unlimited sugar.
Yes, f around and find out. Why not? And you didn't need to eat any sugar at all. You could have gone high fat, low protein and achieved the same thing. Is it a good idea though? No.
As much as I possibly can without protein. Do I just start melting off body fat and then, feel better, if anything, because I'm coming also from a longevity perspective.
Are you? Well, then why are you trying to upregulate your metabolic rate? Because if anything, that's likely to have the exact opposite effect, isn't it, son?
So before this, I was eating kind of like a Paul Saladino type diet. Where
All right, so you really are a f***ing imbecile, aren't you? You really are an absolute waste of space. Wow.
Eating fruit and, protein throughout the day. So I wasn't completely against sugar. I was looking into Ray Pete. So every once in a while I'd have a Mexican Coke, but I was only able to eat like 2,000, 2,500 calories.
No, you weren't able to eat any calories still, not one, because it's still against the laws of physics, you absolute imbecile.
Day without gaining weight. And then I switched to what is now known as like the honey diet, where I basically...
Let me guess. There might be a clue there. The honey diet.
Overeat as much honey and sugar as I possibly can in the early part of the day. And I put all of my protein in one meal at night. And after I eat the protein, I have no carbs. And then I was able to increase my metabolic rate. So
how do you know, son? How's that measured? Where do you have the kit that has the capability to do that?
much where I could eat 3,500 calories a day.
No, you still can't eat any calories at all. Still none whatsoever.
And I lost 10 pounds in a month.
Whoop-de-doo. So what?
So it was like a really...
How was that 10 pounds made up exactly? And how do you know?
Ridiculous experiment. I was literally...
Yes, it was ridiculous. And you're a ridiculous child who needs to shut the f*** up, frankly. You are completely, utterly out of your depth, completely incompetent, and you have no business whatsoever talking about science online. None.
Eating a pound of honey a day, which is why it was called the honey diet. And
F*** me, really? I'm shocked.
That's super interesting.
No, it's not. It's just f***ing ridiculous, smelly. As are you.
So you mentioned a couple studies with mice, and has this been studied in humans yet?
He just said it hasn't.
yeah, so the closest thing to this that I've seen studied in humans was actually released like after I did the honey diet, like almost like a year after. So it seems like they started the study even after we were already doing this in like the bro science sphere. But there was one study where they just gave kind of young men like a protein restricted diet overall. So they weren't even controlling for sugars versus like starch versus,
Right, so you're aware of that then. So you know that the sugar had nothing to do with it. And that it was in fact the protein restriction that had the effect on the upregulation of FGF21 and not the sugar.
like long chain fats versus like polyunsaturated fats, whatever. They just gave them protein restriction over like
You said that 2 seconds ago.
a month or a couple months.
Which? A month or two? Which was it? It was 5 weeks, actually. Read the study before you talk about it.
And they found that the when they restricted protein, that their energy expenditure went up by like a lot.
How is that measured, son? How do you expend energy?
Right. In this study, they didn't see any weight loss because as their protein restriction increased their metabolic rate, they just fed them more food. But in humans, they restricted protein and then FGF21 was induced and their metabolic rate went up. So before this, people have studied like the hormonal responses overall, where they're like, oh, if we overfeed sugar, overfeed fat with no protein, do we see FGF21 or not? Like in humans. but they'd never really looked at the metabolic rate changes. So, I mean, we're really like on the cutting edge here. Like there's studies that are.
You're on the cutting edge. Wow. Son, you don't even know where the fucking edge is. Literally. Is an appropriate use of the word.
They're getting close, but nobody has made the connection to where maybe you don't want to do just starch and fat. Maybe you want to do specifically sugar or like MCTs, like liver targeting macros is kind of the key. And we can dive into that if you want.
So there's like...
Oh, yes, do. Please tell us about your deep dive into the science. Fuck's sake.
There's all these kind of different strategies, but this diet in particular, from what I'm seeing, it seems like it gives you some extra play with calories.
No, it doesn't, because you still can not consume any calories ever, you fucking imbecile.
And I believe there was a study done, and I think it was done in humans that someone sent me. And I apologize, I don't remember like what the heck it was called or anything, but what stood out,
or even what any of the big words meant
to me, and Ryan, maybe you have it over there, but like what stood out to me was it seemed like there was a discrepancy of like 500 to like 800 calories.
No, there weren't any discrepancy at all. Everybody consumes absolutely the same amount of calories every single day, and it's fucking none. Zero still.
Extra that someone can consume. Do you know that study I'm trying to reference, or do you know anything about that in particular?
I doubt he knows dick about Mark, just like you.
I don't know about that study in particular.
Or any thing else, it seems.
I mean, I do know that...
Get some sugar down you though, Mark, for fuck's sake, you imbecile.
Say, like, just as an aside, like there's the studies like on the Biggest Loser people who...
Oh, well, absolutely. If it's on the Biggest Loser, it must be worth hearing about. Because that's some really good sciencing they were doing over there, wasn't it?
Essentially, just do a really calorie-restricted diet.
You can't restrict calories below zero. The exact amount of calories you consume is still zero. There is no way to consume less than 0 calories. That's impossible. Jesus H. Christ, is this hard to understand?
And over-exercise to like really cut weight super fast for a show, and it works.
You want to cut weight super fast, cut your legs off. That's a whole bunch of dead weight you can cut off there.
But then people have studied these people for years later, and their metabolic rate has decreased by like the magnitude that you're saying, right? For even years after that. And then
according to whom, on the basis of what? How's that measured? Exactly.
Usually gain all of the weight back, and their metabolism is even slower at that same high body weight. So it does seem like there are, there's like some flexibility, at least in the down direction, that's pretty well acknowledged, but in the up direction is like a pretty novel concept.
You also mentioned there was you mentioned a study that was done on mice on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, who gives a f***? We're not mice, Mark.
Where the mice didn't lose any muscle mass, but I forget how long you said the study was. Can you share some of that with us? 'Cause I thought that was really compelling.
Yeah, so the study, they basically fed these mice different percent protein diets, so 0 to 18%, and they looked at them for just 1 week.
Right, well, f*** off. For Christ's sake.
Right, and the mice, they all started with around 7.5 to 8 grams of fat on them, and the 18% protein mice, by the end of it, had no change in body fat. They ended with about 7.5 or 8 grams of fat. And then the ones that had 0% protein for 1 week, they ate the same amount of food, yet they ended with only 2.5 grams of fat. So they lost almost all of their body fat. And then if you do the calculation, because they don't share the raw data, but they have enough kind of variables around it. If you do the calculations to see how much lean mass they lost, it looks like they lost none or even gained lean mass over the time. There's no way they gained, right? So they lost 0 lean mass over this entire week.
Over a whole week? Oh, great. Again, next time I'm chairing a meeting of the Mice Society, I'll tell them all about that. Make sure they all know.
But yeah, I want to bring that back to like one thing. It's like kind of the difference between the honey diet specifically, and then kind of the Cole Robinson ideas here.
Oh God, could you name anyone else that's even more stupid than any of the kids you've already named? Is it possible?
In regards to muscle and working,
not a single person with any fucking credibility whatsoever have you mentioned in this entire fucking video, clown. Wow.
out. So I've done kind of like a deep dive on the literature.
Kind of a deep dive on the literature, have you, son? Did you get your mummy help you with the fucking hard words or what?
In like the amount of protein intake that people kind of need to be able to gain muscle and like where it kind of plateaus. And this is like a debated topic probably for the past 5 decades, right? So
therefore it seems pretty equivocal, and it seems like there's still quite a bit of stuff that we need to understand that we so far don't. So therefore there's nothing you're going to be able to tell us that's going to be of any value here, is there? If actual scientists are still tossing this around after 50 fucking years, what makes anybody think you, son, a dropout, could possibly bring anything new to the table? Go on, though.
But it looks like you can kind of maintain like a neutral or decent protein balance, or even positive protein balance if you're working out well, at around 1 to 1.5 grams per kilo of like protein.
Protein? Is it a question? What's with the upward inflection?
So for like a 70 kilo male, it's like 70 grams of protein to 120 grams of protein.
Yeah, that's probably not quite enough.
So
make that noise though with your mouth. It's very important.
With that, I kind of do that with a honey diet where I have my first part of the day have basically only sugar as macros and maybe a little bit of protein, but only from fruits.
Well, make your mind up. Which is it?
And then my entire dinner is like 100 gram, 120 gram of protein dinner, right? And then if you look at any data that's available for how long protein or fats last in your blood, it's usually about like 12 hours before it goes back down to baseline, before your insulin resistance is like kind of reset. Because
insulin resistance is a construct, son.
Protein induces insulin resistance transiently and elevates your blood.
No, that's a construct, son.
Glucose. It takes about 12 hours for your metabolism to kind of reset. And then for sugar, if you eat it in isolation, your blood sugar spikes over within like 2 or 3 hours if you have good glucose tolerance. So
that's also a construct.
Then what this suggests is that you can
and who's to say what's good in that regard?
Divvy up your day into 2 portions where you have like a 12-hour of protein refeeding window and then a 12-hour FGF21 protein deficient window. And as long as you have the protein window during your sleep when you're inherently fasting, you can basically be eating all day and still have this protein deficient state and still get your daily need for protein, right? And this is like equivalent to essentially 1 meal a day, but you're adding sugar in the fasting period, right? So like, I think for like a long-term thing, like there's like 2 perspectives, right? Like Cole Robinson, the idea is maybe you can put these days of sugar.
Right. So there's no point hearing what you're going to say next. You tap Cole Robinson and we know you're a fucking imbecile.
Sugar fasting throughout your week and just cut on those days, and the rest of the days maybe you gain a little bit of weight or you just calorie restrict.
You can't calorie restrict still.
But my idea is that you could do this, you could do kind of like a spectrum within one single day where maybe you do the fruit till noon that like Noah Ryan does if you want to be just like maintain weight. If you want to lose weight more aggressively.
If you want to lose weight aggressively, cut your legs off. They weigh a lot. Great deal of your weight is contained in your legs. Cut them off. Job's done. Jesus. God's sake.
You could still get all of your protein to maintain your muscle, but then put all of your protein restriction.
Everybody come on my channel and make fun of me for suggesting seriously that people actually cut their legs off. Because that's what I did just then, wasn't it? I was absolutely seriously suggesting a good idea is to cut your fucking legs off. You fucking imbeciles. Please, though, make sure you come and make sure you do that. That's important.
In the beginning part of the day. And
ask me if I even lift, though, bro. Also, make sure you ask me to post physique. Because that's all important stuff too.
You could do that every day and just, that's like the way that you eat now.
No, it's not. I don't eat that way at all, and I'm never going to, because I'm not a fucking imbecile.
Or, you could go back and forth between all of these possible ones where you do a
Yeah, you could just fuck around and find out. That's great. Just try any old fucking mindless shit and see what happens. Maybe you end up as obviously healthy as these 2 individuals clearly are.
Fast where you do halfway through the day, you start eating your protein, or you do one day where all you're eating is satiating foods. But the key is to separate them, I think. You just have
yeah, by how much? What an absolute clown. Right, that's the first and last time I'm going to bother listening to that fucking idiot, or both of those fucking idiots. All right, join me next time when someone else will be wrong with interwebs, because there's a lot of it going on. See you then.